Bonjour, mon nom est Philippe Stark. Je suis un explorateur de la vie, de nos vies. Je ne connais pas grand-chose parce que plus ou moins seul. Pourquoi? Parce que j'y suis seul. Seul pour réfléchir tranquille. Seul pour être sûr de pouvoir essayer d'avoir une idée originale, une idée personnelle. Donc voilà, ça c'est mon métier. Travailler avec du Ravit, c'est travailler avec la rigueur. Travailler à très long terme. Travailler pour la durabilité, pour la longévité, pour l'héritage. Ce sera le parfait dessin, sera la parfaite qualité. On cherche surtout à faire un bon produit. On ne cherche pas forcément à faire un beau produit, mais ce produit sera beau s'il est bon pour nous, s'il est bon pour vivre et s'il rend notre vie meilleure, notre vision, notre intelligence. Pourquoi la collection White Tulip? Le dessin est tulipé et il est blanc. Depuis toujours, j'ai dessiné des créations avec du Ravit, toujours extrêmement minimalistes. Mais au bout d'un moment, je me suis aperçu que cette perfection manquait peut-être d'un paramètre. Une sorte de sentiment, une sorte de nostalgie un peu positive, une sorte d'inscription dans le temps. J'ai voulu l'inscrire un petit peu dans le temps de la vie humaine. C'est-à-dire qu'au lieu de faire des collections totalement intemporelles, c'est-à-dire que les formes sont plus souples, on ne peut pas vraiment savoir. C'est un modèle ancien qui aurait été moderne. Un modèle moderne, mais qui a de la mémoire. On a choisi nature et culture parce que c'est un peu l'essence de du Ravit. C'est-à-dire que c'est des objets fabriqués avec une matière naturelle. La nature nous apporte la fraîcheur, l'honnêteté, la vérité, l'évidence. La culture, c'est notre rapport avec cet objet. White Tulip, Tulipe Blanche, est une collection à part et qui en fait manquait. Finalement, le secret de White Tulip, c'est que c'est un objet très luxueux, très sophistiqué, très juste en ergonomie. Mais avant tout, c'est un objet affectueux. C'est ça la différence. Maintenant, nous pouvons avoir de la tendresse. C'est pas mal, non?
I guess it always starts with the functionality. My goal is that what I create should be for many people. In general, I'm quite fascinated by earthen colors, and actually there are more colors in nature than you would actually believe, sometimes really powerful colors. If you see this color tableau for the almond, it's not so that one item is the exact same color as we ended up using, but it's like a soup of colors. It's crucial that you can recognize yourself in the product you did, like looking yourself in the mirror. Doing these tableaus is also, that's a treat for me. I love doing those, so it's also something I treasure doing. It's fun.
Get ready, 'cause here I come.
Gonna move the mountain, gonna touch the sky, stand in the middle of a hurricane, looking right in the eye. Ain't nothing gonna hold me down. Get ready, 'cause here I come. Get ready, 'cause here I come. Moving so fast, can't get enough. Get ready, 'cause here I come. I'll make the world go round. Gonna take the sunshine, light up the night, rise up high and meet the stars, kiss the moon goodnight. Ain't nothing gonna hold me down. Get ready, 'cause here I come. Ain't nothing gonna hold me down. Get ready, 'cause here I come.
Nou, ek het nou uitgeklim en toe weer ingeklim en nou is die klank, hoor ek.
Let's have a look on how to use GoToWebinar. Once you've entered the event, you will notice that your display window is in window mode. You can manually expand your screen by dragging your mouse on the edge of the box. Your audio option is displayed here. You can change your audio option by selecting Calling In or Use Computer Audio. On your event invite is your unique dial-in PIN and phone number to use when using the call-in option. The audio option you are connected with shows a black or blue dot next to the selection. To change it, you can click on the circle of any of the three options. You can test your headphones and speakers here, as well as change your options. Click on the V and look at your drop-down menu. Select your correct speaker and audio mode. If you are connected to an additional monitor, sometimes your audio might be set to the second monitor and not your device audio. You can change it here. Click on the triangle to open or collapse any box. To change to full screen mode, click on the square icons. Click on the same icons again to go back to window mode. You have been muted by the host and cannot unmute yourself. If this pop-up should appear, click on the Don't Remind Me Again wording to remove the pop-up permanently. Click the orange arrow to hide the control panel for better viewing. You can click on the orange arrow again to show the control panel. The Raise Your Hand icon is found here. The green arrow indicates your hand is not raised. Remember to lower your hand after you've been attended to. The red downward arrow indicates that your hand is still raised. The best way to manage your questions box is to undock the box from the control panel. Click the undocking icon to detach your questions box. You can move your questions box around by clicking on the box and dragging it around with your mouse. For better viewing, you can also minimize your control panel. Type your questions or comments in the text box at the bottom of your box and press the Send button. When we answer your questions, you'll see a reply highlighted in green. It will display your question and the answer. Should your control panel be minimized and you receive a message, a chat bubble will briefly appear. To view your message, click on the message bubble icon. You can then view your message and respond back. To leave the event, click on the X at the top right of your control panel. Category 1 CPD Certificate Criteria. A minimum of 80% time attendance is required. The event and certification for this Category 1 event is free of charge. Within 3 weeks from the date of the event, SAIA's automated CPD system will issue attendees with a 0 or free invoice for the CPD certificate. The link to download your certificate will be attached to the invoice. The link to the SAIA portal is eportal.saia.org.za for downloading your certificate. For any inquiries, please contact info@ecpdpro.co.za.
Welcome members and friends of SAIAshare, especially those who are attending for the first time. My name is Gillian Ardendorf. I am the Vice President of the SAIA Practice Committee and our practice in Port Elizabeth, otherwise known as Kubaga. And myself and Eugene Barnard will be hosting this afternoon's event, which is the last for this year, 2021. SAIAshare is an initiative by SAIA Practice Committee and is intended to inform and motivate our members and all persons who love architecture. SAIAshare is held on the first Friday of every month. So this is now the last Friday of this year, so look forward to the first Friday of next year after this one. We want to thank Karina Gibson from ECPD for guiding us through the procedures, and there she is in the background, and thank you for everything you do in terms of managing all the blips and the glitches when the sound doesn't work and all of us have a panic just before we go online. She's really wonderful. Thank you, Karina. I'd also like you to meet Angelique Pillay from Juravit, our current sponsor. Thank you, Angelique, and thank you for the wonderful videos that we see that make us all wish we had those beautiful bathrooms in our homes. We've got a very exciting program lined up for this afternoon, and I'm very pleased to see that we have a good attendance, and we hope that you all will enjoy it. I'm going to just have, in short, mention that our second session, which will be introduced by Eugene, is Al Strafford, who is, thank you, hello Al, very well known to all of us as our past president of SAIA in 2009 to 10, Sophia Gray Memorial Laureate of 2016, and he's going to be sharing a very, very interesting topic, architects as captains of the construction industry. And for all of you that know Al, you will know he's got some surprises up his sleeve. So hang in there and see what Al's going to tell us today. But firstly, on our first session, I'd like you to meet Emil Paulson. Emil is well known to many of us as well as a very active national practice member. Good morning or good afternoon, Emil. Emil is the principal of his own architectural practice in Johannesburg, adept for designing and acting as a principal consultant and principal agent on a variety of projects ranging from both residential homes and public buildings to high-level state security infrastructure. Since 2016, Emil has been a part-time lecturer at the University of Architecture and Interior Design at the Tshwane University of Technology, specializing in professional architectural practice, which is why he is able to assist us the way he does. He's currently serving on the practice committees of both the Pretoria Institute of Architecture and the South African National Institute, our practice committee. In 2017, Emil was appointed by our board to assist us with the practice guidelines, and he was part of the subcommittee tasked to help us develop the new 2018 compendium of practice guidelines, which is all online. And he also assisted with the SAIAshare professional practice exam that's been released recently. Emil will share with us his working knowledge around the practice manual. His topic, exploring the SAIA compendium for practice guidelines, a wealth of information at your fingertips. Thank you, Emil. We look forward to this, and we hope that everybody will not only listen to what you have to say, but they will go online and click into the website and see what you're talking about. Thank you, Emil, and I'll hand over to you and let you continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gillian. I believe everybody can see my screen. I do hope so.
We can see your screen clearly.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Corina. All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Gillian, for that introduction. Now, today I'm going to share with you, as part of this SAIAshare program, the compendium of practice guidelines, and that was promoted as part of the event as indeed a wealth of knowledge at your fingertips. Now, before I get down to the nitty-gritty of it, I want to just share some of my thoughts with regards to the professional practice of architecture. And I'm certain that most of you can appreciate the fact that practicing architecture requires a complex mix of skills within a vast array of fields, such as art and design, business and legal principles, building science and technology, ecology, numerous regulations and the constraints of construction economics, as well as aspects of management, entrepreneurship, and leadership. Now, over and above this, there is a continuously evolving environmental, technological, regulatory, and socio-economic context that we must all navigate and to which we must all adapt. Our primary role as architects is to serve as the spiritual leaders of a project, meaning that we must nurture the client's vision from concept all the way through to completion. And that we do as part of the building delivery process, which is of course divided into the various 6 work stages of our service. And we provide professional services throughout these work stages, but even before and beyond. What is even more challenging for us, despite all of this work that goes into assisting the client with that building delivery process, is the fact that we actually have to be there providing this service as a viable business enterprise, which is the challenge that I think is more and more prevalent for us as architects out there at the moment. It's fascinating to think that when we design a building, one is almost automatically making a countless number of decisions to answer a multitude of questions. And of course, added to that, we must assume responsibilities for all the decisions that we make. Regardless of how one responds when making these countless decisions, we must always remember that as architects, our primary duty of care is to the community that we serve, and that this duty of care prevails over your personal interests as well as the interests of your client. Now, best practice is a term that is bounded about sometimes, and I've noticed this directly from the UIA information on best practice. They say there that it means to provide professional services according to standards that are established in terms of quality and regulations. And that entails for us adhering to legal requirements as well as ethical obligations. The legal requirements are quite clearly outlined in the national building regulations, and society's expectations of us as architects is prescribed in the Code of Professional Conduct, which is that legal obligation set containing various rules that regulate and protect the public. Moving on to ethical obligations. Now, these can be found in a code of ethics. For example, the oldest one known is the Hippocratic Oath for doctors. And the South African Institute of Architects also has a code of ethics, which strives to uphold the highest standards of professionalism, integrity, and competence. And the code addresses various responsibilities that we have towards the public and the environment, the client and users of architectures, other professionals, as well as third parties, such as contractors or members of the general public. And then also, the SAIA Code of Ethics identifies the responsibilities that we have towards the promotion of the art and science of architecture, which are very high responsibilities that we all should be striving to as members of SAIA. So, where does that lead me? Aside from being that source of knowledge that we've mentioned now, the compendium of practice guidelines can be used to support the goals of best practice, while also adhering to the legal requirements and those ethical obligations of the practice of architecture. So I'd like to put it in context and where this whole document originated. It's interesting to know that as architects, we were one of the first professions related to the built environment that was established and set out within legislation in 1927. And even as far back as the 1970s, that original Institute of South African Architects began making information available to its members with the first publication of a practice manual. And that was made available upon joining the Institute. When the original institute was renamed as the South African Institute of Architects in 1996, the SAIA Practice Manual was available in hard copy format, and then it was eventually made available in 2007 in digital format on CD-ROM. And I'm sure that most of your practices have a copy of this document somewhere in the office and do tend to refer back to it from time to time. However, in mid 2017, there was a request made by the SAIA Practice Committee for a subcommittee to be appointed to revisit that old practice manual. And I was part of a team called the Practice Guideline Enterprise, along with Marcus Holmes, Ian Alexander, and Adrian Lowe, who were then tasked to read, review, and convert that previous information in order to become a new form of document. So, while we were faced with a hectic task, let me put it to you that way. The way we approached it, this mammoth task in the very beginning, was to allocate, to carry out a triage allocation of each and every document within the existing manual. And as we were doing it, it became clearer and clearer that the majority of information needed to be either reviewed and updated, or it had to actually be rewritten. We had initially been appointed to read, review, and convert, but not to rewrite. And it quickly became clear that there was a question mark over who was going to be tasked with rewriting or compiling new documentation. I don't mind to tell you that there were some sleepless nights held and much debate amongst our team before reaching a decision to carry on with the task at hand. And we then started full force to redraft documentation. And we would report back in various SAIA practice committee meetings. And as we did so, the sum of documents complete and ready for publication increased. And we chipped away at this mammoth task, and we got through the documentation, and I believe that we have compiled comprehensive new information as well. During the course of our discussions, it was also agreed that this new compendium would be made available to SAIA members in an online format, available for access on a per document basis via the SAIA website, which is quite a revolution in terms of distributing the information from the previous hard copy to that CD that we all know. And the end product has been made available to SAIA practices as the Compendium of Practice Guidelines, and that you can access via the member portal on SAIA's website. And once you open that document, you're faced with this graphic when accessing the compendium, and there are 6 sections to which one can navigate, labeled A through F. And these sections are identified first as A, the profession, section B, the business of architecture, section C, the practice of architecture, section D, pro forma documents, section E, practice notes, and then various documents are going to be most likely archived in section F as time progresses. So throughout this document, throughout the entire compendium, there are various chapters that run through all of these sections consecutively. I'm now going to navigate us through the content of each of these sections, and I'll give you some, and we'll take a look at some examples of the documents that are available to you. Now, in section A, the architectural profession, here we started off with an outline of the historical context of the profession. Also took a look at as an outline of the legislative context. A bit more in-depth look was taken at the Architectural Profession Act. We looked at the functions of SAICAP and the Code of Professional Conduct. Then the roles of SAIA, the roles, the principles, and the ethics of SAIA and the voluntary associations, and some of the laws of contract and agency, property law, as well as a look at some other associated legislation. Now, speaking of legislation, our profession is founded on 2 pillars of legislation, namely the Architectural Profession Act and the National Building Regulations and Building Standards Act. And both of these forms of legislation are addressed along with some of the functions of these acts. But over and above this, there are other forms of legislation that have established juristic bodies that apply to our profession as well, such as the Construction Industry Development Board Act, as well as the Council for the Built Environment Act, which is that umbrella body that is an overarching body that's an umbrella over all the professional councils within the built environment. So these forms of legislation have been outlined within the compendium, as well as the purposes and the mandates of these bodies these juristic bodies that were created by these acts. Now, another example from this section is document number 5.3 under associated legislation, and it deals with the law of contract and the law of agency. It's interesting to think that later in his career, Walt Disney once said that the only thing that he lifts a pen for nowadays, or those days, was to sign a contract or an autograph. Now, as architects, if only it was as glamorous as signing autographs, but we most certainly have to sign contracts. And I believe it's very important for us to be aware of the requirements that must be met in order for there to be for a contract to exist, and in order for that contract to give rise to certain legal obligations. This document also speaks of the law of agency, and as well as that, there's also an outline of the requirements of offer and acceptance. Offer and acceptance, of course, coming about when we as architects provides an offer to provide our service for a price, And the client's unqualified acceptance of the offer then leads to the signing of a professional service agreement. Other documents under Section A, another valuable document, I think, is number 5.4, which takes a look at copyright. And this document was actually passed by the attorneys Pinsent Masons for vetting. And copyright, while it's not something that we deal with on a daily basis, it's nice to know that there is a document that one can refer to when considering issues such as copyright. And document 5.7 deals with sectional titles. It's another example of information that we don't necessarily require every day, but it becomes a valuable asset when thinking of adhering to the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act and the requirements that are contained there. Then also under Section A are various documents that provide a database, in fact, of valuable contact information for various other regulatory bodies and institutes. So moving along to Section B, the business of architecture. And the key parts or components of this section are a look at types of business entities, the business plan, aspects of business administration, human resource management, financial management, as well as risk management and insurance. And of course, when facing the challenges of establishing a practice as a business enterprise, the first question one would ask is how you're going to structure that business. So here we've identified the most appropriate options, for example, sole proprietorship, partnerships, Pty limited, and so on, while also providing an outline of the advantages and disadvantages of each of these business types of business entities. Then another document that I felt was important to add was mention of the business plan. In sitting in various practice committee meetings, there was discussion about the SAIA survey, state of the field, the practice business, and it was found that a large number of architectural practices didn't have a business plan. So this is sort of an outline of some of the items to consider when compiling a sound business plan for an architectural practice. And that, of course, will assist one to survive as a business enterprise. Two more handy documents within this section B are the checklist of employment conditions, which lists those items that should form part of every employment contract. And then there's also a table in document 10.3 on record keeping that outlines the period of retention of specific documents within a practice. And both of these documents were also vetted before publication by Pinsent Masons. Then 10.1, chapter 10 deals with, as part of section B, deals with risk management. And document 10.1 takes a look more specifically at professional indemnity insurance. And here it outlines the delictual duty that we have to the public at large, as well as some of the items to consider when taking out that important professional indemnity insurance. Then moving on to section C, the practice of architecture. And this is probably the largest body of work within the compendium. It starts off with a look at the scope of professional services, fees for professional services. It looks at some of the professional responsibilities that we have, takes a look at professional service agreements, the relationship between the client and the professional team. Also addresses the question marks that sometimes arise over principal consultancy and principal agency. There is then an outline plan of work for a project, discussions on project procedures and processes, and then this section C, as part of the practice of architecture, delves into the construction contract. And I'll show you what I mean by example. And the section finishes off with a look at the various alternative dispute resolution types. Again, those documents have been vetted by Pinsent Mason. So it's good to know that there is a legal backing to the information provided. Okay, so let me highlight some of those documents in this section, the practice of architecture. There's an important one on project initiation, which is work stage 0, which is not always that well known by architects in practice. And I think we do provide some of these services almost automatically on every project, but it's good to know that these services are actually deemed to be additional services, and therefore are deemed to be provided with additional fees attached. So it's important to keep that in mind. Then there is a look at the essential functions of the various work stages from 1 all the way through to stage 6, along with some documents relating to partial services as well as additional services. There's also a document on risk assessments for new projects, which outlines some of the questions one should be asking when entering into when starting off with a new project. And then we've delved into a document on the professional service agreement, which and it sets out the real need for that professional service agreement in order to formalize that business arrangement that we undertake with our clients. It can't be stressed enough how important it is to have some form of contract between you and your client. You know, on a daily basis, whenever we download something, or even putting an app onto our phones, we automatically click, I agree to all the terms and conditions, and that's it. We click the box, I agree, and send. And there are so many various terms and conditions that we don't even know about that we've entered into. So my question is, why, when we are providing services to a client that last typically over a period of a year or a few years, why don't we enter into that professional service agreement? There's also more detailed information provided in terms of the deliverables for the outline and the deliverables of each of the various work stages, which is also an important thing to know what we should be providing for those for those fees we are charging as the project progresses. And then when it comes to the construction work stage, the compendium has actually focused primarily on the JBCC Principal Building Agreement. And the document here that I'm showing focuses on some of the key clauses within the agreement. It doesn't go through identifying each clause and dissecting it and analyzing. There is the key clause, there's a focus on the key clause, and there are also some organograms provided that of the various procedures that take place at things such as practical and final completion. Of course, we are visual, so it's sometimes nice not to have to read through things. It's sometimes better to visualize as these have been presented. So that was section C, the practice of architecture. Now, in section D, there are various pro forma documents. And these are things such as letters regarding the architect service. There are checklists of project procedures. There are examples of letters to consultants and performers of meeting minutes, as well as some of the documents that are used during the construction work stage specifically. So some of the letters are, for example, a letter of offer for partial architectural services. And of course, it is a pro forma document and needs to be modified as needs to be used for the specific agreement. But we really try to cover as much as possible within this letter. There's also a letter of offer for deferred remuneration, which again, we've attempted really to address all the items that might arise in such a condition. Then some of the checklists include a client and project brief checklist. So there are various aspects that one can check off and move through as part of this pro forma. Also, a site information and project program checklist. There are some things here that I wouldn't have thought about when starting off a project, and I think it's handy to always be able to reflect on some of these items before just diving in to a project. There's also a checklist of the deliverables per work stage, which is also handy to have, to know that you've provided all those services as you are going to invoice for them. And this one is also quite handy, the schedule of consultant responsibilities. It is based to a large degree on the PROXA matrix, and as well as various other items that we sometimes would think perhaps are our responsibility, or it creates some more defined lines of the various consultants' roles and responsibilities. And then there are documents for use during construction, and a lot of time and effort was spent on compiling these documents, and it ranges right from the beginning, from the waiver of the contractor's lien, right through to a cover letter for a final payment certificate. So these are really handy resources, especially when one thinks about all the heavy administrative tasks that are entailed in as part of work stage 5 as the principal agent. In fact, I haven't even listed all of them. Within the content, you can see that there's even there's things such as a cover letter for tender, forms of subcontractor indemnity, there's contract instruction examples, etc., etc. We've also included some of the standard documents that are available on the JBCC website that are associated with the construction work stage. Then section E, I haven't gone into depth here, but that serves as a platform for distributing of practice notes compiled by SAIA. And the idea is to actually include practice notes from the various other regional institutes as well. And section D is the archive. And although there's nothing at the moment within this, section F, I beg your pardon, although there's nothing there at the moment, the idea is that this compendium remains a live document and is continuously updated so that it doesn't become superseded, that the information remains valid, and we will be storing existing or superseded documents from time to time as we go on for reference purposes. So, well, I hope that that was a look at the various sections of the guidelines, and I hope that I've given you some suitable information to the contents and an idea of some of the level of the resources that are available to you as practitioners. I'd like to leave with a few final finishing thoughts. Managing a practice can be financially draining, time-consuming, and frustrating, but it is, of course, immensely rewarding. Unfortunately, there isn't a how-to manual, and no document can actually provide a how-to manual on how you're going to run your practice. But the compendium of practice guidelines is a way of tapping into a source of information to navigate the way through the challenges that we all face. I also want to mention that for those of you that have candidates in their practices, there is a new edition of the SAIA study aid available for the professional practice exam. So thank you for your time, and my thanks to SAIA for the opportunity to share this resource and the information available, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Emil. That was very informative, and I'm very sure that everybody will agree there is a large amount of information out there that has been very, very well put together by you and your team. I think just the way you put the slides together gives us a clear indication of the fact that everything you do with the best of your ability. And we're very happy to have you as a member and as a hard-working member for SAIA. So I think we've run a bit behind schedule. We decided to let Emil finish because I think the information that he gave us is so very important. So I'd like to suggest that we actually don't have a very long question section. I know there was one question from Jean-Pierre van der Berg. Are these guidelines also applicable to architectural draftsmen? It is on the architectural, it's on the SAIA members portal, and you need to be a SAIA member to be able to access the information. So that is a slightly different question. We have a look here. We have another one from, sorry, I'm just trying to catch up with them. This is excellent, Emil. Can the platform allow for continuous contribution of content for members in the industry? We come across particularly yes, and I think in summary to that question, the whole idea is, and Emil, I think, sorry, I'm speaking on your behalf, but it's very much a live document, and Absolutely. The idea is that you would add information. You would, if you have something that you've come across, I mean, maybe you want to add to that, but that's the whole idea, is that it is continually growing, it's continually developing, and as we get information, we build on the basis of what we have. I don't know if you'd like to make a comment, Emil?
Yes, thanks, Gillian. That is how it is structured. In fact, one can make a comment or ask questions on a per document basis on the portal, and that then is relayed to the members of the practice committee, and we can then, if there's if there are things that you notice have been superseded, we're doing our best to keep that up to date. And questions are welcome as we progress. So it's certainly an ongoing endeavor.
Thank you.
Julian, maybe just from my side, thank you very much, Emil. And you know, I couldn't wait for my 2 grey files when I joined the Institute in the early 80s. And those grey files and the ones that came after that have been in my library ever since. But can I just encourage the viewers, go and navigate. Just go into the members portal and just go navigate through the compendium. You will be amazed at what you can find. And when you need to prepare a letter that you haven't prepared before or check something, make the compendium your first port of call, because 9 times out of 10 you'll find what you're looking for on the compendium. And I suggest as well, if you don't find what you're looking for, pop an email to SAIA Practice, practice@saia.org.za, and say that you would like the practice committee to look into a standard document and mention it. And in so doing, we can fill the needs, satisfy the needs. But thank you. That was great.
So
Thank you.
Eugene, maybe
Apologies.
what we should just make a comment about is that
Yes.
we have 134 attendees today. So we have potentially 134 people who should be going online and going and learning how to be a good architect and following all the rules and regulations. So yes, that sounds really wonderful. I think maybe, Eugene, we should move on and let you introduce our sponsor. Thank you,
Yes,
Eugene.
well,
Thank you very much, Emil.
Thank you, Gillian, and thank you, Emil, once again. And it's time now for us to introduce our sponsors, Duravit, Angelique Pillay. They have been our sponsors for the past 3, if not 4 events. We thank them very, very much for making, investing really in this program. And I'll say a little bit more about that in the conclusion, but over to our sponsors, and please, colleagues, do support our sponsors. Thank you. Corina. Great. Well, once again, thank you very much, Duravat. And Al, if you're still on board, yeah, would you like to just switch your video on? There we are. Great. Colleagues, as you are probably accustomed, we have two presentations for every SAIAshare. The grey topic, which is the more the nitty-gritty of architecture, the contracts and practice, and then the yellow topic, the joy, fun-filled topic, which we normally end off with, and that's what we're going to be doing today. And I really invite you and encourage you, please stay on. We're in for a treat. If you permit me, then I'm going to introduce Al to you, Al Stratford, although Al, you really don't need much introduction. You entered the profession in an informal or a different manner, but you are there and you have made such an impact in the past decades in the practice of architecture in the profession, to the extent that you were elected as SAIA president in 2009. I've had the privilege of knowing Al for many years, and it was a great privilege to have you inducted as president. We got to know you initially through WinBlock and then WinTech, and now I think you run your business and you work under the brand Win Innovation or something to that effect, but you'll tell us more about that in a moment. Al has won numerous awards, both in architecture and in industrial design, really, because that's very much what you do. It's been a real privilege to have known you, Al. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation to speak to the profession, our colleagues, and share some exciting thoughts with us. And as I have said to you before, and I'd like to say to all our colleagues, Al is a man of vision. I know few people who can see so far into the future. So Al, then it's over to you.
Well, thank you, Eugene. Yeah, it's been a great pleasure to work with SAIA over the many years that I was involved. And thanks, Emil, for your presentation. I am just so excited to see that SAIA is putting forward and pushing the whole thing of compliance by architects, and the only way to do that is to actually understand how to run your practice. So to a large extent, I want to endorse what has been said and support. Talking about captains of the construction industry and architects being those people, I think to a large extent we might have retreated into what I'm saying, or calling the design intent corner. We simply come up with the very exciting parts, but we don't always, in fact, cover the real issues that we should be. If we understand what we are as architects, the word architectonos from Greek means master builder. And hey, are we master builders? So yeah, it's just it's very important that that we continue to exercise our rights as master builders. Okay, I'm just having a bit of a problem with my setup here.
Al, while you're trying to solve that, can I just say to our to our viewers, attendees, there seems to be an internet problem where I'm not sure whether it's in Johannesburg, and so if it's a general problem, please bear with us. I've got absolutely no control.
Okay, so I'll just carry on. I'll just keep on getting something across my screen. Anyway, so the term architect in my mind is, yes.
Al, apologies to you need to share your presentation. Are you struggling to share your presentation?
Let's just keep on getting other things popping up here. So
just
yeah,
close
let me carry
everything.
on. I think I
close
can.
everything for me, and then I'm going to make you presenter again. So just close all your applications first, and then I'll make you representer and you can share your app.
Okay. Okay.
Are you ready for me?
Yeah, I think I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay. Al, what I want you to do is close everything for me again.
Okay. I think I've got everything closed as far as I can see. Can I open my
Do
document
you
again?
want, try and open your document again? Otherwise, I'll share the document and you can just talk and guide me.
Okay, let me put it up. Thank you. Can everybody see that?
No, we're still
Can
seeing
that be
another
seen?
document. Hold on a second. I'm going to just restart your section. Okay, try for me again. So look at the drop-down menu on the triangle and then select your PDF document from there.
No, it's not happening. Sorry.
Okay, just do your introduction. I'll load the presentation on my side.
Okay. Right. Am I live now?
Do you want to try one more to share your screen, or shall I just load the presentation from my side?
I don't know why my screen is not being shared. Okay. How's that? Is that there now?
Just hold on a
Because
second.
I
Let
have
me
it
make
on
you.
my screen.
Okay. Just let me make you presenter again. Then you need to go through that presenter box to select your.
Am I there now?
Okay, we are seeing a blue screen. So we're halfway there.
I've got my screen is back up, but it's not working.
I want us to try once more, just once more. So
How is that now? Can you see me now?
okay, I think what I'm going to do is I am going to move the slides for you, and then you just let me know when I need to advance to the next slide. So I'm going to share the document.
Okay, good. Fine, thank you. Thank you.
And you're ready to go.
Okay, I can see that. Thanks very much. I'm just going to can you maximize it for me, or do I do that? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that interruption. Perhaps we can go to the next slide. Thank you. That's not happening for me.
Okay,
Can
I
you hear
think
me?
you're having, I see on your side you've got connectivity issues. So I'm going to suggest please switch off your camera, your webcam, because I can see from my side there are connectivity issues on your side. So switch off your camera, then your bandwidth will be a little bit faster. And then just unmute your mic still, Al.
Okay, is that fine now?
Perfect.
Okay, I can see my screen and I can see my presentation, so thank you. Can we move forward? Let's go to the next slide. So what I'm saying is, can we build, and can we build within the African context? Essentially, architects I see are prophets of the future, in that what they design and what they have in their heads initially become real theatre of life down the line. And so we have a great responsibility in what we design and how we project ourselves into the future. This slide shows me as a little boy where I grew up on a farm, and I grew up and had a hut for a bedroom, the most beautiful, sustainable little room. Cool in summer, warm in winter. That little hut has disappeared totally. It has melted into the ground. It is totally sustainable. It hasn't left a footprint. It has grown over. I've been there recently. So we need to understand that the world is having a tremendous sustainability drive. And as we look forward, we look at how do we in fact produce buildings. Go to the next slide, please. So we all grew up with the story of the three little pigs. I think you know that, and how the grass one was blown away, the stick one also was blown away. And so we have this proclivity to want to build in heavy masonry, and yet we don't have the skills that we need in our country. They are limited, and so we were struggling to deliver in many aspects. And so the whole world is moving towards the whole concept of design for manufacture and assembly. Next slide, please.
Moved across. There seems to be a delay on your side, so just give it about 3 seconds after every slide.
Okay. So what I've shown you are two slides, the mass timber concept, cross-laminated timber or 3D printing. I believe that these two technologies are perhaps the biggest drivers that are happening globally going forward. Mass timber has been cited as the new concrete, and buildings are now being built up to 30 stories high in the United States. On the right-hand side, I'm showing 3D printed structures. Once again, I believe these are very much first world technologies. They have their place. However, as you can see, the whole way in which the buildings are assembled is done with a crane or with very high-tech machinery. And so to do that within the South African context, I think would be pretty difficult. Next, please. So from my perspective, I got involved in looking at industrialized buildings, but they are repetitive, banal, and inhuman. And this is a little development in here in East London. It's supposed to be temporary housing. We know that housing is never temporary. It'll always be there somehow. It'll just fall down in due course. But this is not architecture. This is banal. This is inhuman in many ways. And so to move forward, thank you, we need to look at a way to build in such a way that we are far more efficient and we can produce buildings using industrialized processes like the rest of the world is doing in many other aspects. But how do we do that? So if you could give me the next slide, please.
I'll just carry on talking. The slides will catch up with you. Don't you worry about the
Okay.
delay.
Fine. So this is a demonstration that we did in fact, I designed this building while I was president of SAIA, together with Cindy Munyama and Native Architecture, and we developed there all the components from this building. So the building was designed with essentially precast concrete components, using in situ concrete for the columns and for some of the stiffening elements within the building. But I developed these precast concrete elements, and these are brought to site and assembled as part of the construction process. Next slide, please. They go up in a sequence base, and in a very simple way, one is able then to assemble the building. We added precast concrete beams to it, and then precast concrete floor tiles that went over the top of that. And we also added ceiling tiles to the underside. And this ended up in a building which was effectively 6 stories high. We introduced precast concrete front walls within the facade so that we could gather the energy from the north facade, which then drew natural ventilation through the building, which exited via a aerofoil section on the roof. And in this way, this building was totally naturally ventilated, and in that way, we were able to achieve the required air changes that one needs in a teaching facility. Please just go forward with the rest of the slides as quickly as possible. So this then ended up in a building that was presented on site and became a teaching facility here in East London. And since then, I went on to develop new technology. And you might know that I, in fact, did some furniture back in 2013 with the design in Durban. I won the award for Stratflex furniture there. But in the last few years, since doing the Sophia Gray, I've focused on developing a new technology, which is essentially the technology that is focused on using timber. As we know, timber is a renewable resource. If we use concrete, we end up in having a huge impact on the environment, because every ton of cement that we manufacture, we in fact are putting that a ton of CO2 into the atmosphere. So it is very important that we move away from concrete. And so I have been applying my mind to developing timber in the construction industry. So in this building that I did for the University of Fort Hare, I was able to reduce the concrete content by 48%. The mass of the building came down. The carbon footprint we reduced by 33% over against traditional in-situ concrete construction. And so from that perspective, although I was using concrete, I was able to reduce the mass of the building and the cement content. Going forward, I developed and put my mind to developing a new timber system. And in this case, we are calling it Winbau, using the Bauhaus term. And I'm trying to develop a fully integrated building system, one that comprises walls, roofs, staircases, floors, every single component within an integrated building system. And so we were able to move on site during lockdown. Dale, who had worked with me to put together the production plant that we set up, designed his own home. And we were able to move on site, and he started to dig away with one laborer next to him, Monde. Monde was a hardworking guy, and the two of them, in a very short period, were able to assemble a building. In fact, it was 12 days, and the whole building was assembled right up to the roof structure. At one stage, he had realized that he didn't have a spirit level or a tape measure on site, and that he had simply assemble the components as instructed or as designed, and he then took a tape measure to the site on the spirit level and found that the building was absolutely true and level and plumb and within dimension. And that is because if one is designing for manufacturing and assembly, one has to essentially work with zero tolerance. We're able to do this nowadays because of CNC cutting of materials, and I have my own in-house CNC plant, and as well as laser cutting of steel. So one is able to then produce a building which is totally dimensionally stable. So you say, well, timber expands and contracts. If you use timber in the right direction, you limit this tremendously. So we only use the timber in the direction of the grain length to a large extent. Where we have to use it in the cross grain, we've introduced control joints within the floorboards, for instance. And so this little building went up very quickly. The time came when we had to go ahead and clad the building. And to do that, I'm just looking at a slide now. We also did the laminated beams in the factory, everything pre-cut to size, the components pre-drilled in the factory, and simply using Allen keys and electric drills. We didn't even have to drill the holes, we just used the bits to drive the screws in. And in that way, this building was assembled very quickly. To clad the building, I was very concerned about the acoustic qualities of most of the cladding materials that we use. And so I developed a precast concrete cladding panel, and these panels are essentially 1 meter by 600. However, I'm using a very lightweight aggregate, and that is perlite. And perlite is so light that you can precast a panel and then put it into water, and we did this to cure them, but hey, they float. They don't even sink. So the specific gravity is about 0.9, whereas concrete is 2.5 or 2.4. Timber is about 0.6. So this material that we then used, we set up production to do that. And then Dale was able to, using a simple silicon gun, we ran a bead around the panel and pushed them into the apertures, and in that way clad that building in a very short time as well. The same material can be used internally. Now this material is totally fireproof. It has a thermal quality. For instance, if you plastered a building on both sides of the inner and outer in a conventional brick wall, you would in fact double the thermal capacity of a 220 brick wall. So we had a total of 100 millimeters, each panel being 50 in its thickness, 100 millimeters of these panels in terms of the total wall thickness. So the thermal capacity is very much enhanced by that. Also, these are fireproof, and you can hold the blowtorch to one side and put your hand on the other side, and you do not feel heat going through. So they are very, very fireproof, and in that way one is able to protect the whole structure at the same time. So I was assisted in this program. Dale was the man with the hands-on, and Hamish Scott, my engineer, who has worked with me for many years. Essentially, he was prior part of Arab, and he now runs a practice here in East London with his brother-in-law, Alan Jones. These guys worked closely with me, and we put this building up in very rapid time. We also had a very, very low budget. So this building was built for 5,000 Rand a square meter. And Dale then moved in at an early stage. He has since put solar panels on the roof, and he's off-grid. And so this building stands in all its glory now in a very wooded site with a huge fig tree. And we've had gales go through there, 100-kilometer gale, and very happy with the way in which the building has come together. In hindsight, and it's always important that that we evaluate what we've done. And so where am I going with this? If we can take this technology, and if we can presented in such a way that architects can draw with it. In other words, if we can capture all the components within the BIM software, if we can restrain their dimensional stretch or shrink, then we can make the product exactly as it is drawn. And if we can also at the same time restrain the use of the technology, the BIM software, on structural grounds, which would be predicated on the local wind conditions or the loading conditions in the building. And if we constrain all the components in terms of the cost, one could very simply then build within your computer, using the software of that nature, a whole building, and press play, and in that way be able to have the cost of the building right up front. So the whole concept of design for manufacturing and assembly is being pursued at a global level, and you can Google that, you can see it happening. To a large extent, architects are using what is known as pods. In other words, and this is very apt in hotel design, we have multiple bedroom suites, for instance. However, I've taken the approach to rather reduce it down to the raw components, and then so that architects can manipulate those components, and then in that way they are then once again captains of the industry, because they in fact are in control of the whole software and the delivery system and the assembly system. So that is my vision for the future. I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm trusting that it does. I'm excited about it. I love the wood. I won the Woodwork Prize in Standard 8, so I'm going back to my roots. And thank you very much for listening to me this afternoon, and thank you to SAIA for the lovely opportunity to speak to you all. Thank you.
There we are. Okay. Well, Al, thank you very, very, very much. Look, Corina, I don't have the the questions box. Gillian, I don't know whether you can
Gillian
see.
has got it open.
I do have. Right.
So I don't know.
I will.
if you-
Shall I just go ahead with some of the questions? So Luke
Yes.
Brown asks, is the structural method earthquake?
I'd like to be able to see you while you speak. If you can switch me on, please.
Yes, of course. Sorry, Sue. You'll have to switch yourself on, Al. You'll just
Try and
press,
switch your webcam on. Just press the webcam icon under the microphone icon.
Just not getting back to my screen, so I can only see the webinar. I can't see anything else. I can't see my screen.
Okay. Do you see?
I can see myself
Gillian?
now.
Okay. Try and. There you go.
Here you go. We've got you now. Thank you, Al. Right. So Luke Brown asks.
Good.
Okay, you ready for the first question? Luke Brown, he asks, is the structure method earthquake proof, and how would it perform in founding failure, severe dolomite or clay soil conditions?
Obviously, the one thing that you can't do when you manufacture off-site is determine what's on-site. So the prior condition is to look at the local conditions on any particular site. Timber is very forgiving in that it's far more flexible. So one can understand that and bring that into the calculations. However, one would have to handle the foundations in terms of the geotechnical conditions at a local position and work from there. So any building, unfortunately, we can't make buildings hover yet. They need to touch the ground, and so that is one aspect that one cannot do, and that is the prior condition to any design of the components that you bring to the. Thanks for that.
Right, then we have another question from Nafim Waggy. She says, he says, what is the R value of the external walls with these concrete panels?
This is a very interesting question. So I went if you look at the way in which our Part X is structured, it speaks about masonry and about lightweight construction. The thing that I counted here was, in actual fact, I have a combination of that. I have a lightweight structural element, but I have a heavy masonry external skin. So I far outclass the masonry thing, which is a lot lower, but I don't comply if you look at the lightweight construction for whatever reason. So that has been a very interesting thing that we're looking at. What I've done in the past, I've always used outside consultants, and we are having to, and so what I did in that case, I actually went to the SANS documents and to the guys that actually voted and raised these questions. And so that is a thing in the mix at the moment. None of the current legislation actually seems to straddle both of those conditions that I have done here. However, if you take the perlite in its own value, and if you plaster a wall 12 millimeters of perlite on one face and 12 on the other, in that situation, it is equal to the R value of a 220 brick wall. So I have not only 24 millimeters, I have a total of 100 millimeters of perlite. So, and the building from a performance point of view seems to be doing the right things. So that's an area that somehow the legislation doesn't cover, or is trying to cover, but not in a cohesive way. I found that very interesting. Thanks for that one. It's a great one.
Right, so I'm going to just go to the next one. Sydney Lefifi, he says, I love your work. It's inspiring. Thank you, Al. So there's a good one for you. Then Paul Decker asks, would you be looking to apply for an agreement certificate for the building system, or would local building authorities assess the building system?
So in terms of going forward with any new technology, one can go the rational design route, which is what I've done initially. And NHRI also covers that as well. So one can, on any particular building, do the rational design. So we did the rational design. That means that every building that we do, we have to do the rational design. That's not a real problem if we've done our homework and everything. So that is one way to go. The other way is to go for that Agrimar certificate. And so I have done that in the past, and that is another whole capital cost which we will face down the line, about R500,000 Rand to do that. So if I have any guys that would like to participate with my new venture, hey, maybe some crowdfunding would help. But that is another way to handle it. So in the meantime, we're doing the rational design route. Unfortunately, local authorities battle with that to a large extent. And so, yeah. And we also know that the court that was established to set up to manage the national building regulations has come under question with recent court cases. So we are in a very difficult area in some ways as we go forward within this country.
Right. So Nathim Waggy had asked that previous question, and then they asked again, is the installation of 135 millimeter isotherm maybe okay? Would it suffice in the external walls?
So the way in which I'm approaching this whole project is in fact to set up, to use the software, you could put in your coordinates. Your coordinates would then determine what region you are in South Africa. And based on that, we could then pre-engineer the software to respond to the particular thermal performance that is needed in a particular region. And as you know, Bloemfontein, for instance, has perhaps the worst situation. And quite frankly, Durban, or in fact, Port St. John's on the east coast here, close to me, has the best in South Africa in terms of thermal performance. So there's a lot of variation in that. So I am determined not to overkill. And why overkill? Why waste money? Why put in a lot of stuff if you don't need it? So it's coming through in terms of the software that we develop. We'd like to make sure that the whole environmental envelope, the performance envelope, is predetermined so that in your coordinates you would then be compliant using the software.
Thank you, Al. Baron Snow, hi. These two presentations have been extremely interesting. Would it be possible to get a recording to go over quietly and slowly, I presume? Sorry, I lost that one. And is it available on the side portal? Sorry, I skipped. That's why I'm just running back to that one.
Gillian,
yes,
sorry.
sorry.
I can maybe just respond by saying, yes, all the recordings become available probably in about 3 weeks' time. We'll just check with Kurina, but apparently she has answered Byron directly.
Okay. All right.
But,
okay, that's great.
Yes. In fact, that's one of the points that I will still raise. I wouldn't need to raise them anymore, but that is that all the prior SAIAshare videos are available off the eCPD and the SAIA websites. So please help yourselves to the information.
May I just ask that perhaps I do a rerun on my recording, because I was highly compromised by not having the visuals in front of me.
That's already arranged.
So, yeah.
That's already arranged,
okay,
Al.
Thank you very much. Good.
Okay.
Then we have Mujahid Barnes. Awesome work. Local authority needs to step up. So essentially at the end of the day, the rest of the questions is just great. Well done, Al. Very exciting aspects. And thank you all. And everybody is very interested and happy. So I think that sort of puts us to the end of our direct questions.
Okay, Gillian, thank you. And please stay online, Gillian. Al, just in conclusion, just thank you very much for that. You know, it's nice to think of what will become available going forward in the palette that we work with. But I think what for me was inspirational about your presentation is not so much that we should now latch onto what you've done in the same way that we became excited when you did Windblock, but it's to inspire every architect, as you said, the captain of the industry. We are there. Let us be innovative. Let's think beyond the obvious. Let's think beyond the specifier catalog, and let's take it from there. So to both Al and Emil, thank you very, very much for that presentation as well. I'm going to take leave of both of you now, and then we're going to conclude proceedings with a few notes. So you're welcome to exit with my sincere appreciation and the appreciation of all those who have been in attendance. Then I also want to just once again thank Angelique and Duravit for your sponsorship. It's really sincerely appreciated, and we look forward. Duravit has indicated that they would be interested in the future of joining us again on SAIAshare. And then can I just say to everyone who's in attendance, SAIAshare really is your event. There's no point in us presenting a SAIAshare if there's no audience or no need. So thank you for attending. I know it's December, but you are here, and I'm sure that you were inspired by the two presentations. If you have any comments or any suggestions you want to make, please pop them into the chat box and Kurina will assimilate them for us. Remember, SAIAshare carries 0.1 CPD1 value. And here's the challenge. Come 2022, the first Friday of every month, if you just attend SAIAshare once a month, by the end of next year, you will have accumulated enough points, CPD1 values, to make other attendance redundant, really. So we hope that you will join us next year. We have an exciting program for 2022 already lined up. Just here's the pointer, not your December salary, but when you receive your January salary at the end of January, remember that will signify that SAIAshare February is just around the corner. For those of you who celebrate Christmas, we wish you a blessed Christmas. And to everyone on board, we wish you everything the best for 2022. Right, having said that, there's just one formality that we'd like to deal with, that is to say thank you to Sue Linning. Sue, I know that you were offline because of your internet. If you are online, wouldn't you like to switch your video camera on for us? If you don't do that, well, then I assume that you still have connectivity problems, but I will assume, there we are. Thank you, Sue. Okay. Sue, I just want to say SAIA and Sue Linning are really synonymous. For how many years now have you been part and parcel of the fabric of SAIA? Now, Sue retired as the Chief Operating Officer, or whatever you were called at that stage, in 2013, I think it was. And then the board requested Sue in 2017 to come on board again as Director of Practice. And unfortunately, Sue has announced that she will be retiring at the end of this month for the second and the last time, I suppose, Sue. It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to work with you. Our association started way back in the 1990s at SAIA, and so for me it is really a very special and sad day in many respects, but just a joyous day to be able to look back and just say, Sue, you have accomplished so much. You've excelled at what you've done. And SAIA and SAIA's members have been the beneficiaries of your competence and your dedication. So we're going to take leave of you today. You were part and parcel of SAIAshare. We conceived it together, and hopefully it will carry on and bear fruit for many years to come. And I hope that you will be a regular attendee come 2022. Gillian, maybe before we give Sue the last word, you would like to add a few words?
Yes, I think yes, I would, Sue. I think it's really important for everybody to know that in the time that you've been involved with SAIA, you've had the most incredible understanding and knowledge of so many varied aspects of the Institute. There is nothing that you haven't had your fingers on. There's nothing that you don't have the history on. There's nothing that you aren't aware of or haven't actually managed at some point in time or dealt with. And the Institute could never have got to where it is today without that support and everything you've done from practice and all the other aspects. And we are exceptionally grateful, because I mean, I just remember being sort of a little spring chicken and coming into the Institute National Office and you just knew everything, and that feels like such a long time ago. Maybe we're all getting older. But Sue, it was a fantastic experience working with you, and I think all the presidents over many, many years will have the same feeling. So thank you. We will miss you, but we know you won't be far away. I'm sure that you will have lots of questions that will come your way. Thank you, Sue, and we trust that this time you will thoroughly enjoy your retirement, thoroughly enjoy your grandchildren, and be blessed.
Right, and Sue, would you like to say a few words?
I just want to say thank you very much, and only the grandchildren are here, but they are sitting very far away. Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay, and Al, you raised your hand. I would assume that you'd like to say something.
I just want to salute the lady. That's all I can say. It's all been said. I want to salute the lady. Thank you, Sue. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here we are. Okay, colleagues. Sue?
I said goodbye, everybody.
Okay, last famous words. Goodbye, everybody. And so it's my last famous words for 2021. Thank you, SAIAshare attendees, and goodbye to everyone. Have a blessed Christmas and all the best for 2022.